Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I've got two articles in this episode, and there's probably going to be several episodes that I'm going to bring in today. So you'll have to stay tuned to see what all I've got here. But all these URLs, of course, are always in the descriptions of my videos so that you can pull them up and check them out for your research and see whatever other things they may have to offer with links and videos and things of that nature. But the first article that I have in this one is the Obama administration declares that Muslim jihadists can join American military forces to be trained by U.S. soldiers, and it's off of sonsoflibertymedia.com. And it says the Obama administration has now given an invitation to jihadists to join military forces in the Middle East to be trained by U.S. troops so that they can learn how to fight against Bashar al-Assad. Middle East analyst Robert Olson reports on the story. Consequences of the U.S. Gulf Cooperation Council summit at Camp David last month already seem to be falling into place, with significant geopolitical consequences regarding the civil wars in Syria and Iraq. The first result seems to be that the Obama administration will offer no significant upgrade other than the 3,000 U.S. troops already in Iraq. The president announced last week that he would add a few hundred more military advisors, but Gulf Arabs will supply the fighting forces. In return, those countries will acquiesce to the U.S.-Iran nuclear agreement. In addition, there are several hundred military personnel in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey in Zurich, NATO air base, where coalition forces, largely American, are training a reported 1,500 vetted fighters from Syria. But the vetting process is haphazard, and undoubtedly many fighters who previously fought with other jihadist groups have joined vetted fighters. The administration's assessment that the American people don't care that much about the wars in Iraq and Syria is correct, in spite of hawkish members of Congress who trumpet the need for more boots on the ground. This situation could quickly change if a Republican were to be elected president. At the summit, the Obama administration reportedly also accepted that jihadist forces, some affiliated with al-Qaeda, could also join the battle against the al-Assad regime. I would not doubt for a moment that these trained jihadists will use their American training against U.S. citizens in America. No doubt these jihadists will kill Christians. Obama's helping to create an army that will persecute and slaughter Christians. Now, this is an old article. You could tell by my, the content of it, what I read there. This was published June the 16th of 2015, but I think it kind of fits in with the next article that I'm going to bring in. And that one is off of thegreatrecession.info. And this one says, Obama's Twilight moves against Israel may foreshadow move to UN Secretary General. President Obama is systematically diminishing the sovereign powers of the United States president by yielding numerous regulatory powers to the office of UN Secretary General. His latest maneuver to strengthen UN regulation of Israel's settlements may not be the finale on his closing months as president, but the prologue to years ahead by pushing his legacy to where he can continue to carry it out at the UN. Congressional leaders say Obama is already plotting further action on Israel before he leaves office, according to the Washington Free Beacon. The Simon Wiesenthal Center put Obama's refusal to veto the UN resolution at the top of its annual list of anti-Semitic acts. One has to acknowledge, regardless of his or her position about Israeli settlements, that Obama is choosing to create an unusual whirlwind of controversy as he leaves office. The resolution, number 2334, states that Israel's settlement activity has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law, and calls for an end to all construction beyond the boundaries that existed in 1967 prior to the Six-Day War. Rightly or wrongly, He is certainly kicking the hornet's nest inside the White House as he heads out the door. It is highly unusual for an outgoing president to initiate a major upheaval in diplomatic relations that runs directly opposed to the direction the incoming president has already said he will take. Trump had insisted that Obama not move the U.S. in this direction, so the wild ride of the 2016 presidential campaign has become even wilder after the campaign. Secretary of State John Kerry kicked the controversy with Israel up a notch with his own speech when he said, "If the choice is one state, Israel can either be Jewish or democratic. It can't be both, and it won't ever really be at peace." In defending the Obama administration against racists of its UN move, Kerry also said, "Critics fail to recognize that this friend, the United States of America, has done more to support Israel than any other country. This friend that has blocked countless efforts to delegitimize Israel cannot be true to our own values or even the stated democratic values of Israel, and we cannot properly protect and defend Israel if we allow a viable two-state solution to be destroyed before our own eyes." And then he took the battle even higher when he said, "Washington could not protect or defend the country should Tel Aviv continue to balk at two-state peace plans with Palestinians." His comment drew swift and sharp rebuke from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who chided Mr. Kerry by saying Israelis did not need to be lectured about peace by the outgoing administration, while President-elect Trump weighed in even before the speech was given with strong support for Mr. Netanyahu in Israel, and vowing his incoming administration would take a sharply different approach. It was an extraordinarily public division between two longtime allies, one that could have lasting and incalculable consequences for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and Washington's traditional role as an honest broker and the main outside power in the Middle East peace process. President Obama divides and conquers. Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, says he fears Obama's actions have emboldened extremists on both ends, while Netanyahu is digging back by withdrawing diplomatic relations with nations that approved the resolution and by withdrawing UN funding. And Palestinians are pushing forward with moves to force a two-state solution. Obama's move has initiated diplomatic international war. The U.S. Congress, with some bipartisan support, has indicated it could cut off all UN funding in retaliation against the UN. Trump has indicated the same thing. While UN members that cut off funding lose their voting privileges, the United States is the UN's biggest supporter. So cutting off UN funding will have serious implications at the UN if it happens. Congress could also choose to expel diplomats of nations that backed the resolution from the US, as Israel did, which may include stripping Palestinians of diplomatic privileges. Congress may also be more supportive of Trump's initiative to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The disgraceful anti-Israel resolution passed by the U.S. or the UNSC was apparently only the opening salvo in the Obama administration's final assault on Israel. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, told the Free Beacon, "President Obama should remember that the United States Congress reconvenes on January the 3rd, and under the Constitution, we control the taxpayer funds they would use for their anti-Israel initiatives," Cruz said, expressing his desire to work with the incoming Trump administration to reset the U.S. relationship with Israel. Free Beacon, quoted above, also reported that one congressional member has said, "Members on both sides of the aisle are furious, so our response will be swift and forceful. With the Trump administration in place, any nation that seeks to delegitimize the Jewish state will need to answer to the United States." So a powerful conflict between the U.S. and the UN with fighting terms such as we have not seen before is likely on. Trump will find he has a Congress that is largely ready to push back, while Trump's statements of unequivocal support for Israel and pressure on Palestinians have been clear. However, Obama may have greatly widened a split in Democrats, which traditionally has been pro-Israel, as Republicans. Even liberals like Ted Kennedy were solidly on Israel's side at every juncture. Our alliance with Israel is an alliance based on common democratic ideals and mutual benefit. We must never barter the freedom and future of Israel for a barrel of oil or foolishly try to align the Arab world with us, no matter what the cost, said Ted Kennedy. The congressional divide between The congressional divide began to materialize when Netanyahu, in the opinion of many, to the delight of Republicans and disdain of Democrats, poked the Democratic president in the eye by sidestepping him in a unique move to take his Iranian petition directly to Congress. Until Netanyahu's highly unusual move, Israel had worked long and hard to stay out of the U.S. politics in order to do all it could to maintain bipartisan support for Israel, and this is why Netanyahu was strongly criticized at home by many who feared the risk would lead to something like this. As a result, Netanyahu's agreement to accept Speaker Boehner's speech invitation, 60 Democrats, including presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, vice president candidate Tim Kaine, and likely future president candidate Elizabeth Warren, boycotted that congressional meeting. Senior Senator Patrick Leahy from Bernie's home state called Netanyahu's speech a tawdry and high-handed stunt. Charlie Rangel, who was a Democratic representative from New York at the time, tweeted, "Bibi, if you have a problem with our POTUS foreign policy, meet me at AIPAC, but not on the House floor." Netanyahu and Obama both denied that this incident had damaged their relationship and Israel's bipartisan support in the U.S., but anyone could plainly see from their body language the icy barrier that had frosted its way between the two from that point forward. Now Obama has tapped the ice wedge a little deeper, knowing full well that Democrats in Congress wish to oppose Trump whenever they can anyway. This may be a divide and conquer move that will further imperil the once fully bipartisan congressional support Israel has long enjoyed. Many in Israel who worried that Netanyahu had poisoned relations with the president by that move now say this appears to be payback time, to the extent that the White House has had to formally deny that it is. As for Trump, he tweeted, "Stay strong, Israel. January 20th is fast approaching." The Israeli ambassador to the U.S. responded to Trump's various statements of support by saying that Israel was very heartened that President-elect Trump was against this move at the U.S. Security Council, that he wants to work closely with Israel moving forward to strengthen this alliance. "I do not think there will be daylight between the U.S. and Israel, and we look forward to having that conversation and seeing what we can do to reverse this resolution." Once Trump is president, backing Israel 100% is one campaign pledge he's likely to keep. While evangelicals, who supply about a third of the Republican vote in the presidential elections, are more than twice as likely than Jews to believe God gave Israel to the Jewish people, only Orthodox Jews are slightly more likely to believe this. Many liberal Jewish organizations, on the other hand, side with Obama, believing the only way for Israel to move forward at this juncture is to negotiate a two-state solution with the Palestinians. One thing is certain, cracks are deepening all over America political landscape regarding support for Israel, and now it is best shown. But Christian conservatives would like to quickly repair the growing divisions in Israel's best interest. Our Hope and Faith and Freedom Coalition, Our hope at Faith and Freedom Coalition is that reasonable Democrats like Senator Mendez, Schumer, Marchin, Casey, and others will reject these feckless failings of an expired political regime on its way out of office, said Tim Head, executive director of a pro-Israel Christian conservative group. These latest antics at the UN are a little more than the warning afterglow of a setting foreign policy agenda that soon will be corrected and discarded. But it will take unified effort by Republicans and Democrats alike to rehabilitate the global reputation of the United States. That may prove to be a bit naive or wishful at best, because Netanyahu's approach already badly grated on Democrats, and Netanyahu has only become even more outspoken against the Democratic president in the aftermath of this UN resolution. As Schumer said, positions are becoming more extreme on both sides. Netanyahu claims Israel will present solid proof to the new Trump administration after the inauguration that the Obama administration took a very active role in forming the new UN Security Council resolution, pushing the issue defiantly. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says, "We have no doubt that the Obama administration initiated it, stood behind it, coordinated its versions, and insisted upon its passage." Israel claims it has ironclad information from Arab sources about the Obama administration's overt efforts to push this agenda in the UN. Reports a couple of the Middle Eastern newspapers seem to corroborate Netanyahu's claims, according to the Times of Israel. An Egyptian paper published what it claims are the transcripts of meetings between top U.S. Palestinian officials that, if true, would corroborate Israelis' accusations that the Obama administration was behind last week's UN Security Council resolution condemning Israeli settlements. At the same time, the report in an Israeli daily Tuesday night pointed to Britain's helping draft the resolution and high drama in the hours leading up to the vote. As Jerusalem tried to convince New Zealand to bury the Security Council measure, in a meeting in early December with top Palestinian negotiator Shaib Erkat, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told the Palestinians that the U.S. was prepared to cooperate with the Palestinians at the Security Council. Israel's Channel 1 TV said, quoting the Egyptian Al-Yom al-Shiba newspaper. Also present at the meeting, according to the report, were U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice and Majid Farag, director of the Palestinian Authority's General Intelligence Service. White House National Security Council spokesman Ned Price on Wednesday told the Times of Israel that no such meeting took place. The transcript is a total fabrication, he said. Israel fears that Kerry, who is slated to give a speech on Wednesday on this subject, will then lay out his comprehensive vision for a two-state solution at a Paris peace conference planned for January. An article in the Israeli daily Haaretz, however, states that Britain pulled the strings and Netanyahu warned New Zealand it was declaring war. A call from Netanyahu to Putin triggered a real drama at the UN headquarters just 1 hour before the vote. And a more recent Times of Israel report states UK officials have stepped up in recent days to say the resolution was theirs, not the White House's. The Jewish Council quoted an unnamed senior British political source Thursday saying that by the time the text reached the 15-member body, it was in effect a British resolution. A day earlier, The Guardian reported Britain played a key behind-the-scenes role in ensuring the resolution passed. Another British source told the Chronicle that the yes vote for the resolution was part of UK Prime Minister Theresa May's new strategy toward Israel, according to which the Jewish state friends have to take a stand against settlements to garner favor with the Palestinians. In response, Netanyahu has canceled a meeting he had scheduled with Theresa May, a move which the British called their usual understated way disappointing. As Netanyahu waits for the Trump administration to take the reins in the U.S. before he divulges his own information about the Obama administration, he's taking the battle to other nations. One alternative Israeli news site has given an extensive but unconfirmed report that states Vice President Biden called Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko to put diplomatic pressure on the Ukraine to vote in the Security Council for the resolution. Biden's office acknowledges the phone call but denies that anything was said about the UN resolution. Netanyahu tried to push back ahead of the resolution with his own ineffective calls to the Ukraine. The Ukrainian vote has set Ukrainian relations with Israel reeling. Ukraine has large Jewish population. Even its new prime minister, Vladimir Groisman, is Jewish. But his first official state visit with the Israelis last week was just canceled by Israel in retaliation for Ukraine's vote. To retaliate domestically, Netanyahu has ramped up settlement approvals in the territories, threatening thousands of new homes in East Jerusalem. If Israel is right that Obama intentionally rammed this resolution through the UN in his twilight days as president, Obama has effectively stripped Trump of any ability to reverse this action. Reversing it would require getting China, Russia, and others on the Security Council, who have long wanted something like this, to withhold their own Security Council veto on any measure put forward by the U.S. to rescind the resolution. There is almost zero chance of getting Russia and China to backpedal on this. Obama has effectively eliminated any possibility for Trump to repair the situation to Israel's liking. Is Obama preparing to become Secretary General of the UN? These sudden moves in the final month of lame duck presidency are the most extraordinary all out. Wow. Let me try that whole thing again. These sudden moves in the final month of a lame duck presidency are the most extraordinary all-out rush to get new diplomacy. Oh, my tongue is tied. Diplomacy solidly in place before the president-elect gets into office that I've ever seen. There would be no point in doing any of this unless Obama believes he can rapidly accomplish something irreversible. An Israeli spokesman warned that last week's anti-Israel UN resolution may be only the beginning. David Keyes, spokesman for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said his government is concerned that the Obama administration is scrambling to put its stamp on Israeli foreign policy before President-elect Donald Trump takes office. We actually believe this may be the first of another series of pushes before the Obama administration leaves office. Mr. Netanyahu fears that Secretary of State John Kerry may seek a Security Council resolution to enshrine the administration's vision for an Israeli-Palestinian accord before Mr. Trump takes office. On January the 15th, 70 nations will converge on Paris to discuss the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Kerry will be there, and there's no question that his 70-minute speech this week set the table for his plans at that summit. According to France's I-24 News, Kerry would propose the recognition of a Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders, and after land exchanges that would allow about 80% of the Jewish residents of the settlement to remain under Israeli sovereignty. The Palestinians will have to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, and Israel will have to recognize the Palestinian state and its capital, East Jerusalem. Kerry is expected to submit his proposal next month, just before the change of administration. Certainly sounds like an all-out last-minute press to establish solid facts on the grounds before Trump can do anything about them, The Guardian reports. White House races to save Middle East peace process before Trump takes office. The parameters outlined by Kerry are expected to draw international endorsement at a meeting of foreign ministers on the 15th of January, just 5 days before Trump moves into the White House. The meeting is supposed to reinforce a strategy of isolating Netanyahu. The Israeli government is reportedly fearful that any guidelines agreed in Paris would be turned into another UN resolution before Trump's inauguration, and it has ratcheted up its rhetoric, presenting itself as the victim of an international conspiracy. Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, portrayed the Paris conference as a new Dreyfus trial, referring to an outburst of French anti-Semitism more than a century ago, and urged French Jews to move to Israel. Aaron David Miller, a former U.S. negotiator on Middle East and now scholar at the Wilson Center think tank, said Obama's 11th hour attempt at legacy building on Israel-Palestinian issue could trigger a backlash. It risked the incoming administration walking away from whatever has transpired in December and early January, and not just walking away from, but sending unmistakable signals to the Israelis that it would support and favor acts on the ground that go beyond what we've seen, Miller said. The odds that Netanyahu will now press and Trump will respond positively to a move to push the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I think, have gone up. He said that if the highly emotive issue of Jerusalem's status became the focal point of Israeli-Palestinian friction once more, then I think the prospects for a serious, significant confrontation are high. Amir Oren, a liberal Israeli commentator, argued that the UN resolution could save the government from itself by bringing closer an end to settlement construction. Santa Obama delivered a wonderful Christmas present to Israel when the United States opted not to veto Friday's United Nations Security Council vote condemning settlement policy, he wrote in the Haaretz. The passage of the resolution won't result in the immediate dismantling of any West Bank settlements, but the world is beginning to come to the rescue and try to save Israel from itself. Indeed, it appeared to be a move in the direction of the world helping Israel save itself, whether it turns out to be helpful or not. And I don't think Obama is just going to throw that on the world stage and then walk away feeling his legacy is complete. I think he's putting it there now while he can so that he can take it up in the global theater when he's out of office. The Egyptian article alluded to above, denied by the Obama administration, quotes Kerry as saying he could present his ideas for a final status solution if the Palestinian pledge they will support the proposed framework. Obviously, he hasn't got much time to present them officially to other nations for actions outside of this one, January the 15th meeting. While a move by Obama to gain Secretary General position at the UN would be a major blow to Angelina Jolie's aspirations, I think there is evidence Obama is moving in that direction now that he has no hope of any political power as high as he's become used to. In all of Obama's biggest initiatives during his last term, his Trans-Pacific Trade Pact, which he puts intense last-hour effort behind, and this month's development of global environmental agreements sought to strip the U.S. presidency of power and empower the UN Secretary General by ceding intensive regulatory powers to the UN. Obama clearly favors things being done at the UN, or his treaties would move so much regulatory power in that direction. So why wouldn't he want to take the position of Secretary General in order to continue to work on these things? Does he appear to be the kind of man to just walk away from power and go fishing for the rest of his life? Or maybe golfing? All of his proposed treaties had the effect of weakening his own current office. That would certainly diminish the ability of any future president to stand in the way of what Obama would like to accomplish at the UN. The underlying theme of all his treaties may be that he needed to diminish U.S. powers while he could in order to create a more powerful international position for himself in the future with less interference from the U.S. Obama may have already secured votes behind the scene at the UN, and delivering this resolution on Israel that the UN has wanted for a long time should gain him many additional votes. He's made it clear for some time that resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a major legacy item for him. With his days now too short in the presidency to accomplish much, he needs to push power to the UN if he's to continue working on that legacy issue. By getting this resolution passed through the Security Council in recent days, Obama reduced some of Trump's veto power over what the UN can impose on Israel in the future. The resolution strengthens UN General Assembly's ability to place sanctions on Israel that don't need to go through the Security Council and therefore are not something Trump would be able to veto. They also give the UN a firm basis for taking Israel taking Israel to international court at The Hague if any further settlement activity continues. Since Trump will try to reverse all this, Obama's declaration on Israel may prove meaningless unless he gains the position at the UN to catch the ball he's now passing in order to keep running it forward. If nothing else, this action will integrate him at the UN or ingratiate him, making his friends there feel that he has finally earned that Nobel Peace Prize he received for getting elected in 2008. Other Twilight maneuvers by Obama that attempt to strip the incoming presidential power. The Washington Post has announced Obama administration is close to announcing a series of measures to punish Russia for its interference in the 2016 presidential election, including economic sanctions and diplomatic censures, according to U.S. officials. The administration is finalizing the details, which are also expected to include covert action that will probably involve cyber operations. Apparently, Obama intends to start a cyber war with Russia before Trump gets in office in order to establish more facts on the ground that move Russian relations away from Trump's stated aims before he even gets started. Administration officials would also like to make it difficult for President-elect Donald Trump to roll back any action they take. Does that mean do enough damage to the Russians that they have to retaliate in a mutual cyber war before Trump takes office? Start a war and leave it for the other guy to finish? That's from the fake news hating Obama loving liberal Post, not the conservative Washington Times. Besides his actions with Israel, the UN, and the upcoming Paris meeting about Israel, Obama, by executive order, locked out major areas of the Arctic for oil drilling on a move that is seen likely irreversible by Trump because of how Congress long ago wrote up the law that allows this executive action. It would take an act of Congress to override the president's move to designate these lands as perpetually being off the table for oil drilling. The Obama administration has dismantled the legal framework Trump could have used for vetting Muslim immigrants. Not sure how easily Trump can reinstate that or put something better in its place. Presidents like to save their most controversial pardons for the last day in office. Will Obama offer Hillary Clinton a pardon that exempts her from prosecution for any crimes committed prior to the date of the pardon? The precedent for pardoning someone before they're even formally charged with a crime was established by President Gerald Ford when he pardoned Nixon as his first act in office before Nixon was even impeached or taken to trial. Could that be why Trump is backpedaling now on his pledge to put crooked Hillary in jail? Is he hoping that by appearing he won't go after Hillary, Obama will not pardon her, an action that implicitly says Hillary did something wrong and that Hillary might have to accept it in order for it to be effective? Obama may prefer not to pardon if Trump appears to prefer not to prosecute, because pardon would be regarded by many as tacit admission that there was some kind of wrongdoing to pardon her from. Trump, of course, is all a Twitter about Obama's end-of-term efforts to cut off his options. Doing my best to disregard the many inflammatory President O statements and roadblocks, thought it was going to be a smooth transaction, not. Obama's legacy treaties remain works in progress that he would like to see through. All the above actions are not the motions of someone who is retiring to the sidelines. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that Obama has no intention of ceding power to the next president of the United States and is using his own powers as president to move as much sovereign power as he can to the United Nations. There are a couple of major problems to my theory. The UN has already chosen its Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, former Prime Minister of Portugal, who starts in just 2 days. The other problem to this theory is that China and Russia would have to approve Obama's nomination before the General Assembly could even vote for him, which means slapping them around as much as he has virtually assured he'd never get the nod. So maybe the way things stack up aren't always what they appear to be, which shows how easy it is to come up with conspiratorial theories. Or maybe Obama is looking 5 years further down the road for January of 2022. But that would be a long bet. Maybe he's just desperate to run a scorched earth policy by stirring up as much global chaos as he can before he loses the opportunity to assure war throughout the Middle East. Or maybe he's working for a higher, darker power, or maybe it really is just a massive temper tantrum against Netanyahu, against Putin, and ultimately against Trump. So there are other explanations. One thing is certain. Obama's actions during his twilight days in office stir up more potential global conflict than any president has ever sought to create on his way out the doors of the White House. In a single week, he has inflamed the Middle East by causing Netanyahu to double down on settlements and terminate diplomatic relations all over the world, and has thrown a torch into the Russian woodpile. And a little gasoline for good measure. With this much accelerated and flame-throwing, the first 20 days of January could get really interesting. You take the first article that I gave you about the jihadists, and then you throw this one in. It's rather interesting information, I think. You're welcome to make comments on this article, and leave them down there under the video. If you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up, share it around on social media so everybody gets to hear the news. For you, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Click that little bell and check the box so that you get the email alerts every time I put a show out. I'll have several for you today here on New Year's Eve of 2016, headed into 2017. See you in the next one.